Hey, good afternoon, everyone. It's 2:01. Sorry, I'm just getting back into the office, so it's a little bit of a scramble here. Um, but we're going to go ahead and get the webinar started. And just want to thank each and every one of you for taking the time this afternoon to go over this kind of final webinar for the call for projects, and really talk about the next stage now that the call for projects is complete. From the board's perspective, to a certain extent, now it's time to shift gears and really kind of move into TxDOT's territory with the local government project procedures. And so today's webinar, it's really about going through kind of the next steps that you'll need to engage with TxDOT and to get these projects off the ground through the federal process. And so for the agenda today, this is really about, we'll go over the award information that was provided in the award letter. I just want to kind of go through that in more detail. We'll also talk about the moderate risk projects and those additional requirements that are required for those projects. And then Will Liska, who's the regional planning manager here at Campo, is going to present on the planning partnership studies. So if you had a planning study award through this process, you'll be working with Will and his team. And so he's got some slides to go through those details as well. And then we'll talk briefly about the project progress policy. That this is a Campo policy for any projects that are awarded by the board, and any reporting requirements there. And then TxDOT will also present on their process as well. And then we've got some time at the end to do some open discussion as well. I set this up just like the other webinars that we did previously. So the microphones are muted by default, but please raise your hand. You should be able to unmute yourselves, I think. But if there's any issues there, let me know. But please, this is kind of an open discussion. The main thing here is that Campo and TxDOT are here to answer any of your questions and really kind of set the expectations of what happens next. This is as much work as the call for projects was. This is really where the rubber meets the road, and this is where the work really starts. So we'll go through that. But anyways, okay. So the award information that you received earlier, just wanted to kind of go through that. If you do not have this, or we're not on the email distribution list for this, please let me know. I'll make sure I can get this to you. Send an email to the funding@campotexas.org requesting this packet. It's basically just a short award letter. It's got the official funding resolution that is signed by the Transportation Policy Board. That is the official approval that TxDOT has to have in order to move forward with the projects. In that, it also has the project award list, as well as the funding sources that have been assigned to your project. It also has a separate table, which we'll go over, which has all the moderate risk projects and the requirements for those projects. As well as it has links to the TxDOT local government projects section. There's a website. If you just Google TxDOT local government project procedures, there's a full dedicated few web pages and a lot of web resources there, and that is directly provided in the materials. And one thing, I guess I didn't introduce myself, so I'm Ryan Collins. I'm the short range planning manager for those who don't know me. Also on the call is Will Liska, the regional planning manager. Christine Tremblay, who is on the call as well, is going to be taking over my responsibilities after this webinar starting tomorrow. And so she'll be handling a lot of this information moving forward. So just wanted to introduce her as well. And then I believe Jan Scholl is on the call as well, representing TxDOT. So project selection and the funding programs, I just wanted to go through, if you've looked through this, these are the awarded projects here on the left-hand side. A couple of caveats about this list is that it only includes the recommended federal funding program amounts, which have been adjusted for inflation to the recommended program year that's assigned on the right-hand side. So the fiscal year is adjusted for inflation based on your original request and when we could plug that in. So there are 5 funding programs. We have the Surface Transportation Block Grant funding, the Transportation Alternative Set Aside, Carbon Reduction Program funding, which has a note regarding that, We also have TIFIA funding, which is a redistribution from the TIFIA funding. It's a one-time source of funding. It's only been assigned to one project. And then we also have Category 2 swap funding. So if your project has Category 2 on that, this is related to a swap that we did with TxDOT. It does have a few additional eligibility requirements, but otherwise functions very similarly to Surface Transportation Block Grant funding. There's only a few projects that have that on there, and it won't change the process on your end, I don't believe, unless TxDOT, I'll let them talk about this a little bit more, but it doesn't change much as far as the AFA process and things like that. It is still federal funding. It just has additional eligibility requirements, which have already been met based on this award. We evaluated the projects to make sure that they were eligible for this program. One thing about the fiscal years, and we talked about this in the previous webinars. So the fiscal year that was assigned to your project, how we came up with your fiscal year, we looked at the eligibility of your funding of your project, what programs it was eligible for, when that programmed funding would become available based on our forecast, as well as the project development schedule. So that's what we use to adjust for inflation, and that is your scheduled fiscal year as of right now. So one thing I do want to point out is that TxDOT is reviewing your projects continually through this process, and that is one thing. These projects and everything that we've assigned, there is a little bit of fluidity with those fiscal years. So so that'll be a discussion that we will be involved with, but we're going to be leaning on TxDOT if your schedule was very aggressive potentially, and TxDOT sees that, they may request that we move that out by a fiscal year or things like that. But so there is a little bit of flexibility with those fiscal years, moving them up or moving them out. We're going to kind of manage that, but as of right now, that is what's assigned to your projects. So I'm going to stop right there before I move into the risk level programming and additional requirements for moderate projects. Does anybody have any questions right now that they may have? Okay, I'll take silence as a good thing. So let's move on to the risk level programming and those additional requirements. So just to give anyone who's not familiar with the context, we had 3 or 4 risk level assignments through the risk assessment, and projects that were determined to be low risk, which is, no project is no risk. The projects that met all of the qualifications as we went through the readiness review process and were considered low risk, we provided a standard recommendation and approval from the policy board, which basically means we think this project as is ready to go as far as we can tell from our assessment. The second thing, and this was kind of a new thing to provide some additional flexibility, there were a lot of projects that we did end up awarding that had some outstanding, like had 1 or 2 outstanding items that we thought could be mitigated very quickly, and those things did not impact the amount of funding that was requested for the project. And these are things, very simple things, like maybe the schedule had some issues with it, or we wanted some additional information on right of way, which was a very common one. Little things that didn't impact the entire portfolio of projects. So those moderate risk projects, we did a contingent recommendation asking the board, please approve these projects, but contingent that we mitigate these minor issues that we've identified. And so I'll talk a little bit about that on the next slide, but I just want to give you all some context of what that meant through the approval process. So they're kind of different. We're treating them a little bit differently when it comes to the TIP programming process. So low risk projects, you've been awarded, we're going to take them out through the fall amendment cycle, and we're going to automatically program those into the Transportation Improvement Program at the next available opportunity. This is the November STIP revision. And then moderate risk projects are going to be going through a slightly different process where they will also go out through the fall amendment cycle, but we're going to include them in the February STIP revision, which is the one after the November, so to give us time to evaluate those mitigation requirements that we are going to be requesting from the sponsors. So just to give you a little more context, all the projects that we are awarded in June still have to be included in the Transportation Improvement Program, and that's prior to any execution of the advanced funding agreement with TxDOT or any obligation through the Federal Project Authorization Agreement. And as I mentioned, we're going to submit them all through the fall amendment cycle. So we're going to take these out to all 6 counties through our community outreach efforts to get public comment. We'll have a public hearing, our standard fall amendment process that we do every 6 months. So I don't foresee anything, different with that. It's just our standard process. Once they are approved to go into the TIP, all the projects are either going to be individually listed, which means they are included in the STIP as an individual project, or a lot of projects we are going to group. Now, grouping basically means you have a streamlined administrative approval process. We do not have to individually list them, and they go through a much faster approval process for an FPAA. And those are for projects, all the studies will go through a grouped process. Engineering will be grouped, as well as active transportation projects are now authorized for grouping. So you will have a more streamlined STIP and TIP approval process. I'm just giving you this information for context. This is something that Campo handles with the district. You do not need to do anything regarding the STIP or the TIP at this time. Just wanted you to be aware this is a crucial administrative step that has to be taken. And so just wanted to let you know that that's going to be happening. So moderate risk requirements. So if you've had a chance to look through, if your project was considered moderate risk, which was, I believe, 2/3 of the projects that we awarded, there was a separate list in the background materials, the award announcement. And on the right-hand column, there are mitigation requirements that we are requiring you to provide Campo. So that additional information, so process-wise, we're giving y'all 90 days from the award notification. So by Monday, September 7th, 2026, please provide the additional funding information at funding@campotexas.org. And then we're going to verify that information. And then those projects where the mitigation requirements have been met, we will move those forward into the February STIP revision. And everything is all good, said, and done from that angle. So we're also going to be providing the Transportation Policy Board an update on this to make sure that all these mitigation requirements are met. If for some reason we don't get what we need, we're going to coordinate very, very heavily with you over the next coming months to make sure that we're getting everything we need. So this is not just we drop off this webinar and good luck. We will be here working for you as a resource to make sure you get what you need. I actually owe a couple of y'all some emails. I know Tyler from the city of Austin, you requested some additional clarification, and we'll be responding to you before the end of the week. So just want to make sure that gets answered. But if you have any questions, please just send an email to the funding@campotexas.org. And then we'll be providing that report. If for some reason we can't get some of these requirements met, we'll take that discussion to the policy board, but hopefully it's a pretty straightforward process. I'm going to stop there because I think this is a pretty important section. Does anybody have any questions about this or your specific requirements on your project? Hey, Keith. Hopefully
Good afternoon, Ryan. Yeah, I just unmuted. Is it possible if we can get you that information to move into the November STIP if we're able to clear the contingent sooner rather than later?
I think that'd be fine. Yeah, if you can get us that information ahead of time, we'll get there. I think, yeah, I mean, certainly if we've got it and we've already cleared it, I don't see why that would be a problem. So yes.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks. Hey, Mikey.
Hey, this is super specific to our Great Springs projects
Yeah.
for studies, but I think our moderate risk mitigation wasn't as much to provide documentation as it was to continue on the current Campo funded Hunter Road corridor
Yeah.
study. So I just don't know if they're, I guess, similar to the previous question, if we don't have actual documentation to provide, but it's more of just like a ongoing, continued, successful project delivery. Would we also be included in the November STIP update?
That's a good question, and yeah, we're going to go ahead and program those because that's kind of a unique situation. So, and you're bringing up a very good point though, that your projects, and I think there's a few others where there's not necessarily a deliverable that you need to send to us immediately. I think y'all might be the only ones that are. I'm looking at the list right now. Actually, I think you are the only ones in that situation where there's not necessarily a deliverable per se. But one thing, Mikey, working with y'all, and I know that one is, is contingent on y'all completing the ongoing study, and we're going to continually evaluate, how that's going. And I don't think that project necessarily has to be complete, as long as we know everything's in good shape. But yeah, if there's no deliverable, we'll go ahead and include that. And that's a group project actually, so we won't have to individually list anything. And that's going to be, because it's a partnership study, that's going to be something that's going to be wrapped up with what Will's going to talk about. So that'll be a little bit different. So I would say, Mikey, you don't need to worry about this moderate risk thing. But I think that's the only one that doesn't have that deliverable aspect to it.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no, thanks. That's a good question. Hey, Andrew, you should be able to unmute.
Yeah, just real quickly, our project, and it looks like a couple others on the list, just has a need to provide TxDOT concurrence. Is that something as simple as just an email saying that TxDOT supports the project, or what are you looking for with that?
Yeah, kind of the same requirements from the earlier, call, is just, provide an email concurrence. TxDOT had certain things. I think if it was, if they were co-sponsoring, it needs to be a letter from the district engineer. And I don't know if Brandon's on the call or Jan. Jan should be on here, but I think an email from either Brandon Marshall, I think was the requirement there, the guidance there. So if you can just, an email would suffice from the district. So.
All right, thank you.
Yeah. Oh, and you got to have Brandon on the call actually. So there we go. Hey, Brandon. Yeah, I don't know if you want to add any additional context to that.
Yeah, so concurrence is pretty straightforward. Just have an email from the area engineer sent to me with y'all's request. If they concur to it, TP&D will concur and we'll get that right back to you. It's pretty quick as long as we've been in discussions about the project. Yes, and as Ryan said, if it's concurrent or if it's co-sponsorship or something like that, that should have been worked out before, and that's an official letter from Tucker.
Thanks, Brandon. Hey, Nat, you have a question? I think you just dropped one in the chat too.
Yeah, just making sure I'm following along. If you're not, if you're on this naughty list, you have things to do before September. But if your project is not listed in that 6/10/2026 email you sent out with the last attachment, page 9, then you're good. You don't need to provide any additional information before September 7th. Am I understanding correctly?
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right on the money on that. So yeah, if you were not on this list, we determined it to be low risk and you've met all the requirements through the call for products and you're good to go move forward, through the next steps. You do not need to provide anything. And so, and that's one thing, I think, these requirements here that are on the mitigation requirements are just kind of minor things that we required, through the previous process, but may have just been missed for one reason or another, or just additional clarification. So kind of minor things, but yeah, if you're not on this list, you do not need to worry about sending anything in. So good questions, and thanks. Okay. I don't see any other hands. So again, if you have any specific questions about your particular mitigation requirements or want clarification, like for example, and I will say there's, like I know a lot of it's like we're just asking for additional right-of-way and utility information. We're not asking for a particular format. I would say just use the guidance from the previous webinars. So if we have guidance in there about what information we're looking for, refer to that, because that's what these are tied to, or those specific requirements that we had that may have been missed through the call for products process. And so just go back to that guidance if you have any specific questions about what we're looking for on that. So, but again, just send an email to funding@campotexas.org if you have any additional questions or need additional clarification. And Tyler, I will get you an email as soon as I can on that. So, project progress policy and reporting. I can't do 3 Ps in a row, apparently. So project reporting. So one thing I want to be very clear on is that all projects and sponsors, you need to are required to demonstrate continual progress through the project development process. And we're going to be doing quarterly reporting to the Transportation Policy Board. And this is something that Christine is going to be leading, and we're going to be providing additional information through email in the coming months, and we'll probably do another training session. We do have a in-house reporting system called My Projects. If you've been around for a while, we started it up a few years back, did a training, and had people reporting on that regularly, and then we had to reconfigure that entire database. We're going to reopen that up with a training session and have people start reporting on that as well. But I want to set those expectations now that, please just get in the habit of reporting on a quarterly basis. We're going to be taking those reports to the Transportation Policy Board. Again, if your project ends up getting stalled for whatever reason or has some kind of issues, please just report those things. We'll report those to the policy board because these awards are contingent that you are actually moving forward with the awards as intended. And with that, I just want to say, you just keep us informed. If there's anything I have learned in the last few years, is that if you every single project is going to have some kind of hiccup. It could be a minor one, could be a major one. I don't know. That's why we're as thorough as we are in the readiness assessment, and hopefully we have mitigated most of that. But this is a dynamic world we live in, and things change all the time. And I know everyone on this call has been in project development. You know how complicated things can get, and there's always unexpected things. Saying that, I'm saying all of that to say, please just communicate with us at Campo as well as TxDOT when you get these issues. As soon as you know about them, just communicate them with us. We are here to support you. The policy board and us at Campo and TxDOT, we just want to see these projects succeed. The last thing on earth that we want to do is take a project back to the policy board and saying, hey, look, it just can't move forward. We are rooting for you. We're rooting for these projects because these are good projects that are going to have a positive impact on the region. So saying all that, so just please prioritize communication whenever you hit an issue. We're here to help, and we will do everything we can to make sure these projects can move forward. So I'll get off my soapbox because I know I could harp on that for a while, but I just want to emphasize that as much as possible. Just please be in regular communication with us, and if we ask for additional information, please be responsive. So with that, I'm going to pass this over to Will Liska, who is going to be leading the planning partnership studies. So Will, I will hand this over to you.
Thank you, Ryan. Appreciate it. And thanks everyone for joining us today. Like Ryan said, I am going to talk a little bit about the projects that are awarded transportation planning, or the transportation planning studies that were awarded through the project call process. Before I jump in specifically to the awards and what we're going to do moving forward, I just wanted to provide a little bit of background on how these awards have traditionally been handled by Campo. So in the past, we would typically only have a few studies awarded every project call cycle. And these would be conducted in partnership with Campo. So Campo would technically be the recipient of the funds, of the federal funds. A local match would be provided by the applying sponsor. Campo and the applicant would enter into an interlocal agreement to lay out the roles and responsibilities of each party and for the transfer of those local funds. Campo would then execute the advanced funding agreement with TxDOT. Campo would issue an RFP and lead a competitive procurement process. Of course, we would have participation by the applicant in this procurement process, but then Campo would execute the contract. And jointly, the applicant and Campo would manage the project kind of on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis. So every project management aspect of the project, the applicant, the partner on the study would be working with Campo. However, for the administrative aspects of the contract, like invoicing, the the progress reports for the advanced funding agreement with TxDOT and so on, that would be handled by Campo. And, you know, if we were in an environment where we only gave out 3 awards for studies like in the past, those could all be procured individually. But this project call process, if you go to the next slide, please, we have 14 studies that were awarded. And they're all shown here on the slide. It's a mix of surface transportation block grant funding and transportation alternative set-aside funding. It's from a variety of different sponsors. In fact, 6 of them shown here on the slide. So if you're one of these sponsors, just please pay attention to the next couple of slides. It'll really lay out how we're going to be working together through the end of this year and how we're going to get this work off the ground. So, like I said, historically, we would procure these individually, but since we have 14 of these studies to get off the ground, let's go to the next slide, please. Campo is proposing what we're calling a partnership study program consultant. So we would be consolidating consultant contracts to deliver this in a more efficient manner and making sure that there's consistency with how each of the studies are managed. So this could either be procured as a single contract. That means all 14 studies procured at once in one large program package, or depending on guidance that we receive from TxDOT on a preferred AFA structure, we may be doing 2 procurements, one strictly for the TASA awards, which are primarily Safe Routes to School and trail feasibility studies, and then one for the STVG awards, which are primarily for traditional roadway corridor studies, kind of extensions, widenings, and complete street studies. So in this regard, we would only have to perform procurement once or twice on a much larger contract value. For this process, though, even though we have combined contracts for the procurement, the interlocal agreements would be individually executed with each applicant. And I recognize some of these might be multi-party ILAs if the award was given to a sponsor and a co-sponsor. So, and I want to be clear that even though Campo would be leading the procurement for this partnership study program consultant, we would still be seeking participation by the applicants in the process, both in the review of proposals received and the scores that we would use to determine the shortlist for interviews, and also sitting in and providing scores for the interviews. Next slide, please. And we're going to be working together to develop what this looks like over the coming months, Campo and the project sponsors for the transportation studies. So I'm not going to be providing too much more information today, but I just wanted to lay out some next steps. Like Ryan already mentioned, there are some homework assignments that need to be completed by sponsors that have a medium risk assessment, and that needs to be completed by September 7th. On my list of things to do is drafting ILAs for each of the project sponsors, seen here in the bottom left in the logos. I'm going to be drafting these and sending them for review to each of the sponsors by mid-July, and I'm going to be setting up individual meetings with those applicants. So either If it's an individual applicant, it'll just be with the folks listed as the project manager in their submission to Campo. And for those with a sponsor and a co-sponsor, it'll be all those listed as PM in the application. So those meetings will be set up this month. We'll be reviewing the draft ILA that I've put together for comment, as well as the scope, budget, and schedule submitted to Campo through the project call process. I think that there's still a few minor details that need to be ironed out on a few of the scopes, but largely because all of those projects awarded were low and medium risk, the scope, budget, and schedule are generally complete for the studies. The ILAs, to ensure that this program moves forward in a timely fashion, need to be delivered to Campo for counter signature, meaning they have to be partially executed by the sponsor by the end of September. As we meet in July to talk about the draft ILA, if there's some extenuating circumstance that prevents signature by the end of September, please come ready to talk about that with me, and we can probably and we can see what we can do to work things out. But the reason I would like to have these ILAs completed by the end of September is so we can just move forward with with the release of an RFP in the mid to late fall of this year. So just an assurance that we can kind of keep a timeline moving, because procurement always does take quite a long time, not just in allowing consultants to develop their proposals and for us to review and interview the teams, but also the contracting and the authorization from our policy board to begin negotiations. And so to assure that we are able to get the STBG program, at the very least, off the ground before the beginning of the fiscal year 2028, when the money becomes available, I want to make sure that we can begin procurement this fall. I'd be happy to answer any questions now. All right, Tyler. Do we have to unmute Tyler? Ryan?
Yeah. Hey, Will, can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you.
Okay. So 2 questions. We have one project for our Safe Routes to School that we put down in FY 2027. If you're doing a full-on RFP in late fall 2026, does that mean you anticipate award, I'm guessing, summer or fall of 2027? How long do you think this RFP process will take?
Part of it depends on how quickly we can get these ILAs signed, Tyler, and if we do ultimately have a separate RFP for TASA funding, which the Safe Routes to School project falls under, we can try to advance that on a different schedule than the STBG. But the procurement process from issue of the RFP to signing of a contract, I'd say, is usually a minimum 6-month process. So I believe that the STBG, the TASA awards still have the potential to begin work within fiscal year 2027, but likely not until Q2 of next year.
Yeah. Okay. And then second question, can we do concurrently work on the AFA execution with TxDOT during this process of selecting a vendor to award the RFP, or do you have to award the RFP first, then do the AFA?
I can start the AFA prior to the RFP process.
Okay.
So it can run concurrently, and fingers crossed. We've lately had good luck our AFA timelines. So I'm hoping that the AFA will be finalized, and and we'll probably even have FPAA in line before contract negotiations even end. So I'm hoping that
Okay.
won't be a limiting factor here.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. I see Mikey. You have a question?
Yes. First comment, this is super cool and ambitious. So thanks for taking this on. When do you think you'll have to decide or be able to decide between the option one of like ganging all of the studies, regardless of program, up into one solicitation versus having the TASA ones and the STBG ones separated?
There's one question I still need to have answered from TxDOT to make the ultimate decision, Mikey. But you know, if I hear what I think I'm going to hear, my general preference is to split this into two RFPs, one for the TASA and one for the STBG.
Cool. Thanks.
Thank you. I see we have a question in the chat from Lindsay McClune. Would projects that are awarded in 2028 still have RFPs being issued in late 2026? The answer is yes, at this point. I do anticipate that, just because the procurement process can take a long time. And by issuing the RFP late this year, it would, for the STBG projects that are being awarded for 2028, we would have better assurance that we can hit the ground running at the start of fiscal year 2028, which would be October 1st of next year. Any other questions? Hearing none, I guess, Ryan, it's back to you.
Yeah, no, thanks, Will. And again, yeah, just reach out to Will if y'all have any other questions. Okay, thanks, Will. So
Okay.
next is TxDOT's up on deck. So as I mentioned earlier, TxDOT is the lead for all of these federal funds, and so I will just they are the ones that are going to manage all of this process, and so I'm going to hand it over to TxDOT. And I do want to point out again, it's Campo's role to kind of support TxDOT and you all as you go through this process, but TxDOT is the lead in managing these funds. So please defer to them whenever they provide guidance. Please make sure that you are, it's really up to them to administer these processes. So just take that into account. But yeah, so Jan, were you going to present this or Brandon? Actually,
I think I'm going to cover it.
Okay. Oh, perfect.
So thank you, Ryan. Got a couple of slides here for some of the stuff we're working on our end, trying to get ready for moving these projects forward. So thanks for the opportunity to bring a couple of notes to the group. So a couple things we're going to go through is project programming, that for those that aren't that familiar with it, getting projects in TxDOT Connect, getting the CSJ going is kind of key to keeping everything moving. Next would be initial project coordination. We've got some meetings we're going to have working through with project sponsors, our area offices, and our district local government office. A couple of notes on agreements, how we're kind of breaking this up to move them forward. Another section here is project development reviews. We're trying to set out some guidelines for what we want to do for reviews, kind of set expectations early to not only help manage our workloads, but also to help keep these projects moving in a timely fashion and prevent surprises down the line. And then one last note is about schedules. Anyone who put together an application for the call knows how key those schedules were. So now that we're moving forward with projects that were selected, it's picking the right or continuing development of those schedules, updating them with the current timelines and moving them forward. Next slide. So a couple of notes on project programming. We're kind of a note you'll kind of get from what I've got to say here is we're kind of prioritizing these based on the risk levels set by Campo. So we're going to start by programming projects that are low risk and approved by the board with the June action. So if they're low risk, we're going to start with programming those. If they're moderate risk, we'll be programming those once Campo and TxDOT confirm that the project sponsors have addressed all the risks identified by Campo in their board action. Next slide. So our expectation would be that the TxDOT local government project manager would provide a completed CSJ request form on behalf of the project sponsor. That can be filled out by the project sponsor or whoever's managing the project for them, but the expectation is that our TxDOT PM would review it and make sure it's got all the right information to try and help streamline this process. So a couple of notes on what I mentioned earlier. So if the project is low risk, groupable in the TIP and the STIP, and there are no questions, that meaning that we can determine everything from the project application, we can get those projects programmed prior to a project initiation meeting. If those requirements are not met, meaning it's a moderate risk, meaning that it's not groupable in the TIP and the STIP, or there are some questions on, limits, scope, something like that, we will require that form be filled out and discussed at the project initiation meeting. And then we will be able to proceed with programming after that. And then lastly, on the programming section, agreements cannot be drafted until we have the projects programmed in Connect. That's just one of the key factors that needs to be done before we can start the agreements. Next slide. So I mentioned earlier, project coordination meetings, initial project coordination meetings. So the purpose of these is to just establish the project contacts, get to know who is the TxDOT PM, get to know who the local government PM, who's the champion for the project, review the scope as discussed in the project application, but also kind of getting a handle on what we're doing moving forward, review the required forms, review required project documentation, and then kind of discuss the general project approach. The expectation is that these meetings would be facilitated by the local government project manager. We've got a draft agenda that we will provide to our project sponsors down the line. But the idea of these meetings is really just to get everybody on the same page about the project and keeping things moving. Next slide. Excuse me. So on to agreements. We all know that the AFA process can be cumbersome and can take some time, but we're doing what we can to try and streamline this process for all parties involved. So kind of a couple of things we're doing is we're going to conduct and coordinate those initial project coordination meetings to assist with the programming and managing expectations for the agreement process. So that'll be managed with the district local government office. So that's Jan and her team, the individual area office for where the project was selected, and then the local government. So we're going to prioritize the agreement drafting, processing, and execution based on several factors. The Campo risk assessment. So low risk projects will proceed based on their TIP status if they're approved. Moderate risk projects will not proceed until Campo approves the project for funding, which our interpretation of the board action is once the risk has been cleared and downgraded from a moderate to a low. As Ryan mentioned earlier, they're going to handle the addition to the TIP and the STIP working with us. But our request from the TxDOT side is please make sure that you're communicating any changes or requests to change the project with Campo and us. That way we can ensure that when we're doing our review with Campo of any TIP and STIP entries, that everything is captured accordingly and that things don't fall through the cracks. Excuse me, next slide. As I mentioned, STIP status, so groupable or individually listed. So groupable projects, we'll start on those first as soon as we've got board approval of the funds and the listing in the TIP. So as soon as Campo's ready with that November revision. And Ryan can correct me if I'm mistaken on that one. And then individual listed projects, we'll start on those agreements once they are included in the TIP. So that would be once the November revision is approved is our timeline for those. And then we'll also prioritize agreements based on the letting date or award date of the projects. So this is all to try and keep a good queue of these AFAs moving and address them as on starting with the lower risk projects, moving towards the higher risk ones, and getting them done, allowing not only the project sponsor, but also TxDOT to get everything in order to move them forward. Next slide. Lastly, on the project development reviews. So the project review process will be established prior to the AFA execution. So right now, internally, we're working on kind of some ground rules for setting up what our expectation from the TxDOT side is on the reviews. So a lot of this is the expectations we're trying to set on these are going to be based on the type of project, the scope of the project, whether it's on or off system. Some of the items that Campo has already identified through the project call process, whether there's utility or right-of-way coordination, what type of effort's going to be required on those. Are there any environmentally sensitive areas? Anything that's going to need to be taken into account that might have some longer lead that will need to be verified. And then also verifying the project development status where the project sponsor was at project application, and then where they're at now, and then seeing what next steps are. So for instance, planning studies, we don't anticipate a lot of quote unquote design reviews for that. That should be pretty straightforward. No review paid upon receipts of deliverable. The amount of review will vary for on or off system projects as determined by the scope of the project. But I don't want to get too many details on that because we're still working through what makes the most sense for these projects moving forward. But we'll provide that at a later date. And I believe that was the last slide. Oh, sorry, schedules. I cannot forget schedules. This is the last slide. So the new LGP scheduling tool, I know we talked about this at the webinar that we had at the TxDOT offices, and I know Jan and her team has been kind of hyping this one up for a while. So please make sure that you're filling out that LGP scheduling tool with your project application. Make sure that's provided with that CSJ request form. We're requiring that for programming on the projects that are not the low risk ones that can be programmed right away. But we are, if it's not required at programming, it is required at the project initiation meeting. And then lastly, schedules provided as part of the application must be updated and provided with the LGP scheduling tool with all elements of the project included. So all the phases, where we're talking about right away, utilities, environmental effort, accounting for whether it's a state letting or a local letting, making sure you've got time for LG processes in there as well. Anything we can help review and make sure that our projects are on schedule, trying to meet not only y'all's timelines, but also ours. So that was a lot of information. I can answer questions now, or we can wait until Campo is ready for the broader questions.
Yeah, no, Brandon, actually, I think this was the end of the, kind of open discussion at this point. So, and thank you so much for that information, Brandon. I would say, please take advantage of the fact that TxDOT's on the call and ask any questions. Because as I mentioned earlier, they do manage this process, and please defer to them, get them what they need, and be responsive to them as well. The more, and that's really our role as well as Campo, is just to support the district. They have a lot of work to do. This is a lot of projects, honestly, for the district to get all at once. And so please be mindful of that, and please respond to anything they need as you move forward with these projects. But yeah, it's really kind of open discussion. Any other questions y'all may have, let us know. So thank you, Brandon. Hey, Nat.
Hey, apologies, I joined late. But my question is this: so the bottom line is that things need to be in the tip and the STIP, and that process is going to be finalized in November. I think I heard something about an interim listing, but I'm not sure on the details on that. So that's kind of question one: is there some kind of interim listing? And then related to getting on the tip and STIP, Campo is going to open up that process starting when, and the local governments need to be actively engaged in that process to make sure it gets on the tip and STIP. And when does that begin?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. So for the STIP process, and I know Brandon touched on this as well. So all the low risk projects are going to automatically be included in the TIP, either as a groups project or as individual listings. And they'll go out in the fall amendment cycle. We'll put them in the November revision, which is the next available opportunity for us to make any changes to the STIP. And that usually takes a couple of months to get approved after it's submitted in November. And we're prioritizing, or at least TxDOT is prioritizing those projects first through the development process. The moderate risk projects are going to be included. We're taking them out in the fall amendment cycle, and they'll get approved just right alongside the low risk projects as well. The difference is we're going to put the moderate risk projects in the February revision to give us time to go through all the moderate risk information that's provided to us, assuming it shows up around the due date of September 7th. So hopefully that made sense. Y'all really don't need to do anything other than the moderate risk mitigation. So once we get that information in, what we're going to do is we're going to review that alongside TxDOT to make sure we have everything we need, and then downgrade it to low risk. At that point, it's ready to go into the SIP and TIP. Hopefully that made sense.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Hey, Fernando.
Hey, Ryan. I had a question on the way some of the projects for the city were categorized for moderate risk. And I don't have all the information really, but if we're able to address what makes it a moderate risk, is that something that, we can program earlier? It looks like, from what TxDOT was showing us, is that they'll evaluate it if it's something that can be programmed earlier, or is that, am I misunderstanding that?
Yeah, no, I think, and it's similar to the question that Keith had asked earlier. I think it's like, if you can get us the mitigation requirements, get that information to us as soon as possible. It doesn't have to be, around September. If you have it now, or whatever, it's really just contingent. Once we get that information and have time to review it and make sure that it gets us what we need, and crucially, TxDOT has time to review it as well. As soon as we get that information and we clear it and it's downgraded, then we'll move forward as quickly as possible, and as far as getting it programmed in the TIP and kind of moving it forward with the rest of the processes. So I would just say get it to us as soon as possible, and it'll shift the schedule based on when we get that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, gotcha. Thank you.
No, thanks. I know we're getting kind of close to, oh, it looks like we have a chat question. Let's see. Hey, Tim, Tim left a question in the chat saying, for moderate risk projects with a deliverable, how would you prefer us to submit our deliverables? And so what we'd like you to do is just email it to funding@campotexas.org by September 7th, that due date. So just send it to that email address. Email is great. And that I've got a link to that in the presentation pretty high up. So let's see. And it's in the award letter as well. So just send it to funding@campotexas.org. So, all right. Thanks, Tim. I know we're getting kind of close to time. Does anyone else have any questions before we wrap up? Once, going twice. Okay, well, we're gonna wrap up. So a couple of just last things. We are going to post this online. So if you want to rewatch this, feel free to. The presentation will also be posted on the Funding Opportunities webpage as per our usual practice. Again, any questions y'all have, funding@campotexas.org, just send it there. We'll get back to you as soon as we can. And then also any of the mitigation requirements, please send them there. But again, obviously this webinar is ending, but we are here, Campo staff, we're here to support you and TxDOT and getting these projects move forward. So please reach out to us if you need anything. And just want to say thank you all again for taking the time this afternoon. And hope you all have a good rest of the afternoon and wonderful 4th of July if you're able to take it off. So thank you so much.